Awesome. Yeah.
Welcome to the Sleep Experience podcast, where we take a deep dive into the latest sleep hacks, gadgets, and strategies to skyrocket your productivity to new heights. Being a high performer is all about resting at 100%, so you can execute at 100%.
Contracts and medication, they weren't doing anything for me, so I felt like my back was up against the wall.
This is Riley, host of the Sleep Experience podcast. At the Sleep Experience podcast, we interview health experts and teach our community how upgrading their sleep is the one thing that they need to unlock their biological code and maximize their performance in an effortless way by doing more with less. Do you want to become a productivity machine, have genius ideas automatically pop into your mind, stop feeling so stressed, build better relationships, and generate more income? Optimizing your deep sleep can do just that. Visit thesleepconsultant.com to learn more. My guest today is Dr. Tracy Gatman. Dr. Tracy is a board-certified urologist, world-renowned men's health and performance expert, and founder of the Gatman Institute, the global leader in high-performance health. With over 20 years of experience focused on men's health optimization, human performance, and longevity, providing executives and entrepreneurs a personalized path to fulfill their highest potential. He's been featured in Entrepreneur, Dave Asprey's Biohacking Conference, and as a TEDx speaker. Founder and CEO of the Gatman Institute for High Performance Health, best-selling author of Male 2.0 and Codes of Longevity, member of the American Academy of Anti-Aging, Age Management Medical Group, and International Peptide Society creator of the proprietary G1 program in high performance health. Dr. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Raleigh. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. And I really like your focus in high performance health because that's definitely where my interest is. Sometimes, there is a place when people are sort of in a state of deficiency or disease and kind of bring them back up to, 6, 7, and 8. But I really like working with people who feel like a 7 or an 8 and I think everything's fine, but really fine tuning to get into that optimized 10 out of 10 state. And I'm curious, like in your words, who are the average people that you help? And is there any like transformations or types of people that stand out to you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, we definitely align in that regard, Riley. I come from the traditional healthcare world. I spent 25 years almost as a urologist, as a surgeon, doing robotic surgery, treating disease all day, every day. And I found that our healthcare system is very focused on treating disease, treating symptoms, finding a diagnosis code, and treating it typically with a pharmaceutical. Hell, even functional medicine, as great as it may be, it's still focused on treating disease, whether it's Lyme or mold or autoimmune or whatever ailment or condition someone may have, finding the root cause and treating the illness and the symptoms associated with it.
Got it.
To me, that's really where I start. That's really what I have this paradigm, this arrow diagram. On one end is diseased state, and on the other end is an optimized state.
Got it.
And I feel that traditional medicine and functional medicine really get you to that neutral point, free of disease, free of illness, free of symptoms. That's where I focus on what do we got to do to get you to an optimized state. And for that, I have very clear protocols on how we do that so that we can take high-performing individuals like you asked who we work with, like the entrepreneur, the solopreneur who is running his own business, who's scaling multiple locations of a business, venture capital guys, private equity guys, professionals, dentists and physicians, attorneys, CPAs, guys who are running big companies, C-suite guys. All these guys, they need help.
Yeah.
And excuse me, they tell me every day, I want to have more energy and focus. I want to burn fat, build muscle.
Got it.
I want to have better sex. Or what do I got to do just to live not just longer, but better?
Yeah.
And traditional healthcare doesn't help you with any of those.
Yeah.
And that's what high performance health is really all about, Riley.
I love it. I think that's amazing. And I think these are the kind of guys that need it the most. I mean, they're just so many spinning plates at once that they just don't know how to keep up with it. But it's kind of like a car. Like if you improve your internal machinery, it's like running like a Ferrari instead of a 1980s Toyota Corolla. And they just see the difference in how they feel. How about sleep though? How can you think busy executives and entrepreneurs improve their sleep? It's really in depth, but do you have an overall model how you like to approach that?
I do. And I emphasize, and I'm so glad to be on this podcast with you because I believe so strongly how important sleep is for your physiology, for your systems. And when I work with guys, I'm working on multiple systems that all come into play. We have this complex operating system, I like to call it, and all the inputs ultimately affect the output. And sleep is one of those biggest inputs. And so I just want to briefly emphasize how important the work that you're doing is, and I really align with that. So I appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you.
When I work with guys, and we work with men and women, I want to clarify, my focus has always been men's health, but I have a team who work with women as well. When it comes to sleep, there are lifestyle maneuvers and there are molecule maneuvers, if you will, or things that we can prescribe, things that we can give. So often the mistake is to lean on the molecules. And molecules are fun. They're thought of as the magic bullet, as the easy shortcut.
Yeah.
But it's the marriage of the two that I think is so important. And that's what we work on. I have FDN, functional diagnostic nutrition, functional medicine coaches who work with all of my clients specifically on the lifestyle component of sleep. And it takes consistent, accountable action on a daily basis, for sure.
Yeah. Amazing. What about, supplements? I think, if you think of a pyramid, that foundation is very important. Like lifestyle, you have to get everything in. You can't biohack your way to better health if you're only sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night. But where do you think supplements come in? And do you have any favorite supplements, the top 5 that people can use day to day? And then I'm sure there's kind of like case by case supplements that you would use.
For sure. Yeah. The first one that everyone thinks of is magnesium and specifically mag-glycinate, mag-threonate.
Yeah.
I like magnesium. I'm not going to bash it. That being said, there's not a lot of strong magical data on how effective magnesium really is. So yes, magnesium, and let's move on to some stuff that really, in my opinion, makes a much bigger impact.
Sure.
I look at supplements like GABA. We have in our brain, we have glutamate, a very excitatory neurotransmitter, and GABA, which is a very calming, soothing, inhibitory neurotransmitter. And there's this balance between the two. And for some people, this is where genetics can come into play. Their GAD1 genes, a glutamic acid decarboxylase gene, which converts the two, doesn't do a good enough job of producing enough GABA. And so without that calming inhibitory neurotransmitter in our brain, we don't get that relaxation that we need. And so GABA supplementation, I love for that reason. You could use pharmaceutical pregabalin as well, but I like oral supplement form first as an initial introductory supplement. I love 5-HTP, in terms of supporting serotonin production. I love L-theanine. L-theanine is a great herbal. I love ashwagandha. For some people, they get amazing benefits from ashwagandha. Others, not so much. But those are all some basic supplements. B complex, I think, is really important. Those are some basic ones that I would start with when it comes to molecules before we start moving on to some of the other stronger things that might work as well.
Totally. And when you start working with somebody, providing that temporary relief care, I think that GABA, the L-theanine, the 5-HTP, those are the things that people just feel so fast. Like I remember reading Julia Ross's book, The Mood Cure, and I was reading it for the first time. I was like, oh my God, there's so many things in here, and trying it and just seeing that difference and responding so well to it. I think it's amazing.
For sure. Sure.
And also, the thoughts become emotions, which become chemical reactions in the body. So if you really want to get better and optimize, it kind of does start in the brain. So I love how you approach it that way.
Definitely.
How about tech, your favorite tech gadgets, anything like that on the horizon or that you suggest clients, patients use?
So when it comes to tech, you can look at things like devices that you can use to improve sleep or augment sleep. And I love sauna, first of all. It's not truly a device necessarily, but tech necessarily, but I love sauna. 45 minutes of sauna in the evening before bed, I think is fantastic. You can use it with or without infrared. I love red light as well. When it comes to tech with sleep, the obvious conversation is going to revolve around tracking and tracking data. And when I work with high performers, you may feel like you're sleeping okay. I want to see data. I want to see numbers. And so I use a platform, a dashboard where I can see your sleep quality metrics real time. And those are specifically deep sleep and REM sleep.
Amazing.
And those numbers are really important to assess the quality of your sleep. I see guys who may sleep 7 hours, but yet they only get 12 minutes, 8 minutes, 6 minutes of deep sleep.
Yeah.
And that is crazy, but that's the restorative sleep you need. And without that, that's why you're not building muscle. That's why you're not burning fat. That's why you still feel like shit. That's why your cortisol is high. Yeah. And so what do we got to do to improve deep sleep would be a focus there. And so the tech that I use, I love Aura. The Aura Ring is I know you've talked about this, previously. It's one of the most validated devices out there. When you look at the polysomnography data, it's probably the most validated device out there. So I would say Aura would be number one. I like the Garmin. I wore Garmin for many years, and the data was great on that as well. Some guys, this is weird. Some guys will wear it with a Garmin. They'll wake up, go to the bathroom, and then it'll take them 15, 20, 30 minutes to fall back asleep because of other cortisol detox issues. And then their device thinks that it's a whole new night and it starts over again.
Oh, no.
And so it'll only record like 3 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep from that second half of the night. And so I found that to be sometimes problematic with the Garmin. Sure. And so in general, I find the Aura to be much more consistent. Now, that being said, I've played with Apple lately as well, and the data's pretty damn good on Apple also. Is it? And I used to bash it. Apple sucks. And even though I'm an Apple guy, when it comes to sleep, the data was not very good. Way. Yeah. The algorithms have really improved where I'm impressed. And I've worn both. I've worn an Apple and an Aura, and the data's pretty damn close. Interesting. I've worn Apple and Garmin, and the data was close. I've worn Garmin and Aura. I've tried them all, and I'm not a huge fan of Whoop. Some guys love it. I'm just personally not a big fan of Whoop or Fitbit. But I'll emphasize that I think when it comes to tech, the most important thing is, what are you going to use consistently? You know, a lot of guys now use the mattress, the 8 mattress, because they're not going to wear anything at all. And if that's what it takes to get you to track sleep, then so be it. Yeah. But it's really to be accountable for yourself. What are you going to use on a night to night basis so that we can really see some data?
Got it. I think those are really important things because what you keep track of, you have awareness for. And it's interesting when coaching clients, a lot of my jobs, it makes my job easier because they just see the numbers and start self-correcting themselves. So it's really cool. How about lab testing? I guess on the conventional side, you go to your generic, get the generic lab testing there. That's a conversation in itself. But what are kind of the advanced types of labs? Could be on the functional side or anything else that you like to look at first.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of advanced diagnostics. That's really the foundation of what I do. I can apply that specifically to sleep for our conversation here today.
Sure.
That I think might be valuable is when I think of sleep, what are the problems that poor sleep can cause or promote? And it comes down to cortisol. When you don't get the repair recovery aspect of good quality sleep, you have elevated cortisol, you have elevated resting heart rate, you have low heart rate variability. And so some of the labs that can show up there would be things like, CRP can be elevated in marker of inflammation. We do a lot of salivary cortisol testing for guys, and we'll see a lot of times where their salivary cortisol will be super high in the evening and early morning, and then it plummets during the day because they're exhausted, they're wiped out, and then it spikes back up again around bedtime and in the morning. So cortisol testing will often be affected with poor sleep. And then one of the bigger ones, Riley, would be fasting blood sugar, like awaking. Fasting blood sugar. I'll see guys with a blood sugar of 105, for example. Wow. And they're not diabetic and they're not even necessarily insulin resistant. Yeah. But it's the cortisol. Yeah. And the cortisol is promoting elevated blood sugar upon awakening. And so I'll see that a lot. And that's often a sign of issues with sleep.
Yeah, those are really big. I also like, doing an organics test and seeing people with seeing their brain neurotransmitters too. It kind of goes back to that conversation, like their mind's racing all the time. That's another good one too, plus a lot of others I can imagine. Do you ever seen, doing a cortisol saliva sample or a urine-based one, a very low overall cortisol sum, and that can lead to sleep issues? Because sometimes people have been burning the candles for so many years and their body just completely burnt out where their adrenal glands just can't keep up with the output.
Yeah, they're in stage 3, and I hate the word adrenal exhaustion or adrenal fatigue, whatever, but I'll call it stage 3 of adrenal dysfunction, where you'll see super low cortisol all the way across the board. Those guys are exhausted, but then they can't fall asleep. That guy will be so exhausted. The high stress guy will work his ass off till 1 a.m. He'll wake up at 3 a.m, can't fall back asleep. His mind's racing. He's up at 5. His day's ruined. The classic pattern. But then the other picture you're talking about is the guy who's exhausted all day, but he goes to bed 10 o'clock. He knows he's supposed to, and he lays there for 2 hours, can't fall asleep because he's so tired, but yet he doesn't have the neurotransmitters, and he's in a state of dysfunction.
Yeah, I know that's huge. And how about peptides? What do you think about peptides? It's kind of
I
become
love them.
the new ketogenic diet these days. But I've heard of,
Right.
I'm just getting into it myself, but I've heard of like BPC 157 is very good for your leaky gut and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about peptides, what they are and how they help?
Yeah, I love peptide. Yeah, we do a lot of peptide therapy. One of the you just reminded me. Thinking about cortisol is one of the best supplements when it comes to counteracting cortisol that I love is DHEA.
Okay.
And you can do over-the-counter DHEA, or even
Yeah.
better is micronized DHEA. And
Okay.
DHEA is great for counteracting cortisol, and I do love to give DHEA twice a day. And I do think that indirectly it probably helps with sleep in that regard as well.
Okay,
like
that's
counteracting
great.
cortisol.
What do you think of, just a side thing on that, what do you think of pregnenolone with the DHEA? Is pregnenolone beneficial?
So yes, for guys who have cortisol dysfunction, adrenal dysfunction, I do like pregnenolone to help support DHEA production, etc. And some of those back channels you're filling, quote unquote, in theory. But I do like that for anyone with adrenal issues. Yeah.
Okay,
I don't think you're
awesome.
going to necessarily feel a magical difference directly
Yeah.
through pregnenolone. I think it's more of a indirect side
Got it.
effect that you're trying to get there.
Got it. Amazing.
Peptides.
And then peptides,
Yeah, as it relates to sleep, first of all, I love the growth hormone peptides, the growth hormone secretagogues, especially at bedtime.
Yeah.
So the most common one people hear about is CJC ipamorelin combination. CJC is a growth hormone releasing hormone, so it acts like GHRH to stimulate the pituitary to make more growth hormone. And then ipamorelin is blocking somatostatin. Somatostatin turns off growth hormone production, so you're turning off the brakes. You're removing the brakes basically to help working together to increase growth hormone production. That is massive for sleep, specifically deep sleep. I'll find guys who have trouble falling asleep, especially, or who wake up from stress a couple hours later. CJC, one of the first benefits within a couple of weeks is they'll have markedly improved sleep parameters as one of the first big benefits of it. So I love CJC ipamorelin. Tesamorelin is taking that to the next level. Tesamorelin is like CJC, but much stronger.
Okay.
To the point that I'll only cycle that for a 4-week period, maybe once a quarter or so, maybe once every 4 months, maybe. You don't want to use that too often because it's so strong.
Yeah.
So those are some great growth hormone secretagogues. I've played around with DSIP, deep sleep inducing peptide. I have not seen great results anecdotally over the years now, and I've kind of leaned away from using it for that reason. I like C-Link and C-Max. Those come in nasal spray. C-Link was available injectable for many years. For the 6 months now, we've had a hard time finding it. But those are great for anxiety, mood regulation. Sometimes that can be helpful for sleep as well. So those are some of the sleep peptides that I would look at as introductory level. Yes, BPC you mentioned is a great peptide for inflammation. It can be taken orally. It's going to have more of an effect on the gut.
Yeah.
So it's going to help with some reflux symptoms. I have seen a lot of guys with gut inflammation, leaky gut, that sort of thing, find massive improvement with that as well. So that can be taken orally. It can be taken as a sub-Q injection for systemic inflammation. You could even inject it near a joint. So the example is I had tennis elbow, and I actually injected sub-Q right over the joint, and it was incredible for reducing inflammation there locally as well.
Amazing.
If you have a regenerative doc, they can actually inject it intra-articular as well into the joint space itself. I would not recommend anyone do that at home without unless you're you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of different ways of giving BPC. Yeah.
Yeah, I can think of a lot of things my parents need along those lines of achy joints and stuff like that. But
Yeah, right.
it's difficult to just get them to take certain supplements, so that might be a little far away.
Right. Yeah.
How about heavy metals? Can you talk about why they're dangerous for their body? And if we want to get them out of our body and brain, how long does that actually take?
Yeah, good question. I don't do a lot of work with heavy metals, honestly. We'll do testing for it. We do, you can do urine, you can do hair testing for heavy metals. I am a big believer in detoxification and identifying toxins in our environment, endocrine disruptors that are causing a massive effect on hormone function that have massive downstream effects as well. We don't do a lot of work with heavy metals. If I find that, I have a couple functional medicine doc experts who I work with on that. But yeah, you bring up a good point that it takes a long time to clear those from your system.
Yeah.
I've had a couple guys with mercury and lead, and it takes a long time.
Yeah. It's a really long time. And turning that into, longevity, especially within the high performance circles, anti-aging, Brian Johnson, everything like that. So where do you see longevity going within our lifetimes? Do you see it's going to be possible to reverse aging one day?
Sounds exciting. I am obsessed with this field, and I think it's incredibly exciting. The reality is, I think we're probably going to see very small incremental changes over time, where we'll see finally, rapamycin can give you 2 years of life, or this combination is going to give you another 2 years of life. And I think it's going to be incremental for a while until there's suddenly some magical breakthrough that's going to give us big chunks of advancement in age. Sinclair's book Lifespan talks about us, in our lifespan being able to live to 150. I'm just not that optimistic yet. I think the science is coming. I'm not quite a believer quite yet. I got to see some more data. I want to see some incremental change first to see that that's truly possible. Now we are seeing advances in biologic age. So we do a lot of measuring biologic age, true age kind of testing, where you can measure rate of aging or your physiologic age, and we can demonstrate clearly from 1 year to the next a reduction in biologic age. What we have not yet seen, though, is does that correlate, does that translate to you truly living longer in the end? And that's something that we're still hoping to see. We're seeing in animal studies, we don't have that data yet in humans.
Interesting. Yeah, seeing Brian Johnson, his biological age is something like 20 or 18 or something like that. Like it's crazy what he's able to do. I mean, doing the exit of his business and then just focusing on that full time. So also interesting. We'll get him on the podcast one day, hopefully sometime soon.
I mean, it's super exciting. I think that it's, my fear is that there's too much hype around it and there's not enough substance. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll put it that way.
Sure. How about the future of health, personalized medicine? What excites all that for you, and where do you see all that going?
Yeah, my passion is on the data, on the metrics, on the AI side of things, and how we can accumulate vast sums of data and individualize it for each person. Okay. What I mean by that is we currently incorporate in all the clients we work with genetic data. We get 750,000 SNPs that we're looking at. We get massive amounts of blood data. We do functional testing, microbiome and cortisol and urinary organic acids. And we're getting wearable tech data, CGM data, and sleep data, and HRV stress data. How do you assimilate all of these data points for an individual to be able to construct real application and personalized guidance on take exactly these supplements, eat exactly this food, do exactly these things? And it's a lot of data that you have to assimilate to do that. And I can see that happening in a very short time.
Got it. Is there any software out there that accumulates all that data into one sort of centralized hub that people can look at and monitor?
Yeah, I'm using Biocanic currently. Okay. Biocanic, BIOCANIC, and it was initially a functional medicine platform, but it allows you to assimilate lab data. You can actually order with my clients. I'll order lab data through that platform, and they'll come back in, and you can tabularize that data as real. So I'll get a LabCorp blood data, for example. I'll get a microbiome test. I'll get an organic acid test, and it'll come through as actual data points that I can track on a graph over time.
Amazing.
You could also track wearable tech data on that as well. So I'll track multiple wearables, CGM data as well on that same platform.
Yeah.
So I think that's the future of health. That's where we're going. And that will enable us to make those incremental changes that we're talking about, I believe, when it comes to things like longevity.
Totally. It's all about the trends and where somebody's starting, where they're going, and micro-optimizing along the way. Love it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any last words of wisdom, Dr. Tracy, before we close things off today?
I love it. Yeah, man. It's all about taking a comprehensive, personalized approach, knowing that everyone's different, knowing that you have to look at what's right for your body, find the blind spots, understand that one size fails all, and you got to be consistent with what you do once you find out what's right for you. And that's the key. And there's such a tendency toward see what the Twitter world says I should be doing and trying to follow that like a sheep. And you just can't do that if you're going to get the results you're looking for.
Yeah, totally. Love everything you said today. Really appreciate you coming on today. I learned a lot today, and I'm sure our listeners did as well. If people want to learn more about you, where can they visit?
Awesome. So you can text the word health to 26786. Again, health to 26786. And you'll get a free copy of my high performance handbook.
Oh, amazing.
And that'll give you some 20 strategies and tactics to help you achieve some of the goals we're talking about here today. And then that will also give you a link if you want to reach out to my team for more information as well.
Yeah, I've also looked at that myself, and it's amazing. So highly recommend people check that out. And we'll put that down in the show notes below.
Awesome.
All right, guys, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to learn more about how sleep can benefit your personal and business life, visit thesleepconsultant.com. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Sleep Experience podcast. We'll see you next time on next week's episode. Be sure to subscribe and follow us to get future updates on everything sleep, energy, focus, stress, and better performance.